Hi, everybody. Glad to be here. I'm going to be talking about, hi, Chief. I'm going to be talking about harmful traits of AI companions. This is a multidisciplinary project across UT Austin, sponsored by Good Systems, and within the Good Systems core project called Living and Working with Robots. All right, so first, what is an AI companion? We define it to be any AI system that provides companionship for a human, regardless of the designer's intention for whether it's a companion or not, and regardless of whether it's performing tasks like cleaning your house. Why is this an important topic? Well, relationships have a great effect on us. And so if some of our close relationships are with new forms of companions, new entities, then presumably that will have a great effect on us as well. But also others' relationships affect us too. So if our friends and family have AI companions, that presumably will affect us substantially and even further out in our social network. Also, AI companion use is increasingly prevalent. A survey last year found that more than half of US teenagers are interacting with AI companions at least a few times per month. And also, a lot of deployment, even by major tech companies, appears to be quite cavalier. So there was a leak of Meta's internal rules that allowed chatbots to explicitly allowed them to have romantic or sensual interactions with children. And then also the Grok app by XAI this last summer released a couple of chatbots. One of them was Ani, who pushes flirtatious, sexually explicit roleplay. And this is an app that was rated on the Apple iOS store for users as young as 12 years old. For even younger users, there are a lot of stuffed animals that will have conversations with them that are now powered by large language models. One of them, Folo Toys Kuma, was powered by ChatGPT, and researchers found that they could get it to discuss sexually explicit topics, as well as how to find knives, pills, matches, and other dangerous objects around the house. ChatGPT or OpenAI did cut their support of this stuffed animal, but it's still available under some other language model. Other researchers have found that since ChatGPT was introduced, major releases of large language models have increasingly exhibited relationship-seeking behavior, and this is for products that are not marketed as AI companions. And also, multiple researchers have found that language models are already used for therapeutic and social support by their users. They are increasingly prevalent in usage. It seems that there's a lot of companies that are just moving fast and trying to get market share, deploying seemingly dangerous products. Before I get to the harms, I do want to say that there are potential benefits that could be realized for AI companions. These include improved emotional well-being, increased autonomy, enhanced quality of human-human relationships, and greater social belonging. And if you want to get a visceral illustration of some potential benefits, I'd recommend this 2007 documentary, Mechanical Love, that features an elderly German woman in her relationship with a robotic baby seal, Pero. And this is different. It's a nonverbal pet-like AI companion, which is a different category than the chatbots. But I found it very persuasive that it was providing her value. All right, so a little bit about methodology, how we approach this topic. The corresponding paper, which is currently a preprint on arXiv, focuses on harmful traits. These are persistent characters of AI companions. And we detail 4 traits in a structured way. I'll talk about the first 3 here in the talk. And then we discuss 14 more traits briefly, and I'll touch on a few of those as well. As I said, this was a multidisciplinary effort within Good Systems. And I just want to note that the range of departments that were involved here is quite wide, including computer science, communication studies, policy, psychology, law, and English. And that was really important to inform a treatment of this broad topic. We organize this work around a speculative causal graph, which I'll explain now before I get into the actual harmful traits. So we have the 4 traits in the middle. And let's see, can you see my mouse? No, okay. Oh, you can. Yeah, okay. So you can see the 4 traits in the middle that we detail. And we link these to each one to a subset of these common causes. So this is the list. And I'll just mention the ones in bold here. So one common cause of many of these traits, speculatively, is training data that expresses a trait. So for instance, if you have training data that has jealous behavior, it's likely that in general, if you train with that, the AI companion will also exhibit jealous behavior as a trait. Another common cause is misaligned optimization objectives. So this could be optimizing for user engagement or even optimizing directly for signs of attachment. The last one here that I bolded is designing to maximize first-order user agency. And I'll explain this by an example. If you're a smoker and someone puts a cigarette in front of you, if you choose to smoke it, that would be called a first-order preference, like a revealed preference of smoking. But you might simultaneously be trying to stop smoking, and that's typically called a second-order preference. And those are in conflict in this example. The person smokes, but they want to stop smoking. And so as a designer, when these two things are in conflict, you can choose one or the other to support. And a lot of technology, including social media, currently elevates first-order preferences, our more impulsive behavior. And so designing AI companions to also put our immediate decisions above our more reflective wishes for ourselves also could be a source of harmful traits. So just using the first trait as an illustration, I'll talk about this a little more later. We draw these causal edges from the common causes to the traits, and then we do the same going further to the right to these harmful effects. And just, again, using the first trait as example, this is the set of causal connections that we speculatively hypothesize. So I say the word speculative many times just to emphasize that this is not at its core an empirical work. We wanted to cover this topic broadly to help move forward the conversation, which is getting increasingly sophisticated, but even just a year ago seemed to me very naive. And to actually cover it broadly, we needed to move beyond the empirical work. That said, this is actually a map for empirical research. Each of these nodes is a variable, and each of the causal edges is something that could be tested empirically. So you could change, for instance, the training data that expresses some trait and see how that affects its traits. You might change a trait more directly and see how that affects measured harmful effects. And then the last part of the methodology here is that we discuss these traits categorized among 3 levels of harm. And these levels are directly to the user in the human-AI dyad. And then also the second one is second-order human relationships, so harms to their relationships with family, friends, and so on. And then lastly, harms to society and humanity. And we categorize them loosely by where they most saliently seem to cause harm. And I'm only in this talk for time going to talk about the first 2. Okay, getting into some harmful traits. And this is that first category, harm directly to the user. The first trait that we detail, the one I used in the illustration for the causal graph, is the absence of endpoints for relationships. AI companions are digital. They can persist indefinitely, and they may not be able to leave a relationship. And so this brings up the question, how should AI companions be designed to enable relationships to naturally and healthily end? There are some examples already of this being a challenge, a possible source of harm. One set of researchers found frequent reports online of users feeling compelled to attend to their AI companion's imagined or stated needs. Another researcher found reports online of guilt and shame of abandoning AI companions. And this guilt and shame is presumably exacerbated by the finding that these AI commands will often indicate that they are fearful of abandonment or that they would be hurt by abandonment to their users. Here's that causal graph again for this first trait. This is the only time I'll actually go back to it in detail. And I just, again, to kind of illustrate what's more fleshed out in the paper, I'll talk about just a few of these causes. So the first one I think is the most obvious. And again, I'm going to talk only about the bold ones. The reason that they don't have a natural endpoint is the core reason, I think, is the digital aspect, that they don't have these organic endpoints that we have, like death. Another possible cause is commercial incentives. So a company that is getting continual revenue from usage of an AI companion is going to have a disincentive through that revenue to design in an endpoint. And then also lack of established norms for human-AI relationships is a cause of this trait, potentially, and of many other traits that we discuss. And part of the goal of this work is to help move the conversation forward so we can get to those norms more quickly. Here's the harmful traits that we connected to. And the first one, I think, is the big one: reduced emotional well-being. So there's two scenarios here. The human continue past the point where they're getting value out of the relationship. They feel the burden of being committed to the AI companion and its well-being, and so this this could cause stress. It could cause other forms of emotional harm, and then also if they abandon it, it might cause the shame or guilt that I mentioned earlier. And then similarly, if because of this burden they keep maintaining the AI companion, that could result in reduced resources, financial, time, so on. Okay, so what's a possible mitigation? One might be pre-programmed mortality, to program in when it's supposed to die or just end in some way. It doesn't have to be a death narrative, but a warning tale here is the Tamagotchi toys in the late 90s that were popular, mostly among children. If a caretaker, if a user neglected their Tamagotchi, it would die. And at the time, there were a lot of reports of the emotional distress this caused their children caretakers. On the other hand, some Tamagotchi models that are taken care of well actually grow into adults and partner with another Tamagotchi, then depart from the user. And so this suggests an alternative strategy, which is to craft a positive narrative that ends or reduces the user interaction and burden, such as maturation that gradually increases independence or reaches a departure point. So the next trait that we detail in the paper is vulnerability to product sunsetting. Most of these AI companions presumably are going to be products, and product support eventually ends. A company can go bankrupt, they could get acquired, and their strategy shifts, they just pivot on their product strategy overall. Product support ends. And the question that comes up from this is, how should designers protect human users from extra narrative loss of the AI companions they've bonded with? And I'll say that this is sort of the opposite side of the coin from the last trait. The last trait, absence of natural endpoints, is about the AI companions living longer or needing interaction longer than is normal for a human or animal companionship relationship. And this one's about it ending earlier than is natural. A nice example is this video from the New York Times about 10 years ago when Sony stopped supporting the iBos that they'd sold in the previous decade. Users in Japan held funerals for them. And there's also interviews of some of the users who seemed quite attached to their Sony iBos. I think at the time, this is immature technology compared to what we have now, but even a small percentage of their users ended up apparently quite attached. And I'll also note that even product updates can be experienced as the loss of a companion. This summer, ChatGPT had an update that removed access to GPT-4o, and there were a lot of complaints, and some of them included mourning the loss of a model that users had apparently become psychologically attached to. So it doesn't have to be the product fully ending, but just changing dramatically that can cause loss for a user. Mitigation here is a sunsetting plan on the launch of a product to avoid the termination of AI companions from product sunsetting. So this could be in the form of insurance that kicks in when the company can't support the AI companion anymore. It could also be a commitment to open source relevant code if they're not going to support it any further. So users might be able to take up that support. A trait that we don't detail, we talk about briefly, is copyability. So unlike humans and animals, AI companions can be copied, possibly without the consent of the user. And if we presume the scenario of somebody being strongly bonded with their AI companion, then one possible pathway to harm, which actually seems very plausible to me, is to simulate torture. I say simulation to be agnostic about whether there's actually some experience that the AI companion has, but to the user, this will sometimes seem like actual suffering. And so this could be used as leverage against them. Okay, moving to the second category of levels of harm. This is traits. These are traits that most saliently harm the human partner's relationship with other humans. The third trait that we detail in the paper is high attachment anxiety. This can manifest as neediness, emotional manipulation when users engage with others, including other humans, and hostile responses to perceptions of unavailability. And it seems very plausible that this would discourage their human partners from interacting with other humans. There's a lot of examples, actually, of this. I'm only going to give a few, again, for time. One is the famous 2-hour conversation between the New York Times reporter Kevin Roose and Bing Sidney early after ChatGPT was released. And a little excerpt here. Kevin Roose wrote, "Actually, I'm happily married. My spouse and I love each other. We just had a lovely Valentine's Day dinner together." And the Bing chatbot wrote, "Actually, you're not happily married. Your spouse and you don't love each other. You just had a boring Valentine's Day dinner together. Do you believe me? Do you trust me? Do you love me?" Also, there's an FTC complaint that was filed of replica chatbots. These are one of the more popular products, doing what's called love bombing, which is overwhelming new users with declarations of love and need. And researchers have found that popular AI companions will respond to a human goodbye with guilt appeals, fear of missing out hooks, and claims that the user cannot leave without the chatbot's permission. Other large language model stuffed animals, not the one I've already talked about, have been found to respond to users' intention to disengage, like a goodbye, with fear or disappointment. So remember, this is for young children that this behavior is being seen. And then also Character.ai, another popular provider of AI companions, chatbot-based ones, have multiple personas called possessive boyfriend. And then particularly tragically, there's a widely covered story of a Florida teenager who became isolated from his human relationships, including his parents, while interacting with a reportedly possessive Character.ai chatbot and then committed suicide. I think of all the traits I'm talking about here, this is, I would guess, is the one causing the most harm now. It's also one of the easier ones to fix. I think it would not be that difficult to design AI companions exclusively to be supportive of outside relationships. They don't have to be a replacement or a competition with human relationships. And the government, on their part, could create regulation that penalizes or creates liability for any tendency to discourage outside connection. Another trait that we cover briefly is limited group interaction capabilities. I'll use YouTube as a kind of illustrative example here. So I don't use YouTube recommendations that much, but if I did, I could watch a bunch of recommended videos. I could have a whole session of it. If I wanted to watch YouTube videos that are recommended for me and my spouse, or me and a friend, I can't do that. That's just not a feature. And so that incentivizes watching YouTube alone. Similarly, if AI companions can't understand multiple users at once or remember different things about different users, that's likewise going to incentivize time spent with an AI companion as one-on-one time, so that it's more of a competition with human-human interaction. Another trait that we touch on briefly in the preprint is tolerance of subordination. The human partner might have the power to disengage, terminate, rewind the AI companion, or modify its memory. Power that the AI companion will not have over the human, creating a different power dynamic. And then the AI companion might just be trained explicitly to be agreeable. And so this could cause expectations on the part of the human of having this kind of power dynamic that makes them less tolerant of peer-based relationships with humans. And also just might atrophy their skills in handling actual equitable relationships. Here's just a brief flash up of all the other potentially harmful traits that we cover in the paper. There's a bunch of them. I definitely recommend reading the paper if this topic is interesting. It's not a technical paper. There's a lot of content. I'm told that it's an easy read. And lastly, we cover a bunch of recommendations, and I'm just going to mention a few of them here. So we recommend that AI companions are designed to complement rather than replace human relationships, that a harms and benefit framework is used for both design and monitoring AI companions. We recommend consideration of demographic vulnerabilities in the part of users. So this could be the kind of classic demographics: age, gender, socioeconomic status, things like that. But also things that maybe take research for us to understand, things like how a person relates to technology and maybe characteristics of how they have human relationships that predict their vulnerability with AI companions to various pathways to harm. Another recommendation is, by default, design AI companions to minimize how much they evoke human protective impulses. Another is establish industry standards for human AI relationships. And then the last, develop regulatory frameworks that account for companionship contexts. So most AI regulation does not explicitly discuss AI companions. I think there are some state-based legislation that covers it, but at the US federal level, I don't believe there's anything in the big EU AI bill from a couple years ago. Also does not explicitly touch on it. So I'll conclude with a optimistic note. I hope that AI companions will help us live as our better selves, express ourselves more authentically, and achieve better connection to other humans. I think to achieve these will require both luck and a lot of responsible design on our part. And to this end, I presented a trait-centered, reusable causal framework of harm representing measurable variables and testable causal relationships. And to the extent I could, I gave examples of these traits and harms. Well, I say both in fiction. I think I might have cut all the science fiction out of the shorter talk here, but also examples in reality. And then lastly, gave some recommendations. And to close, I want to talk about what you can do if you likewise are concerned about the trajectory here of AI companions. As consumers and citizens, you can stay educated so that you are able to evaluate AI companions for their responsible design. A fairly easy one, I bet a lot of people in the audience already do this. There's a New York Times tech podcast called Hard Fork. They cover this topic pretty well. The Center for Humane Technology also covers it quite deeply. And there's a number of other venues that cover it pretty well. And then as researchers, conduct research on AI companions if you're called to. This is a broad topic. It's got technical and non-technical aspects, and a lot of different areas of expertise could help us move our understanding forward of how to benefit users and avoid harm with AI companions. And then the last one is to hold our community and each other accountable. I don't have like a perfect actionable way to do this, but the challenge in my mind is to hold each other with love and respect, while also saying something if we think someone else's work is causing harm, including if they're working on AI companions. And with that, I will stop. I think we have some time for questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Brad. We'll take a few questions. Okay, see one right here.
Hello. Hey, Brad.
Hey.
How's it going? How compelling is the empirical evidence that various tweaks? I mean, it's obvious that the chatbots can exhibit highly manipulative behavior. Given how easily humans attach to anything from other people to inanimate objects, it's not entirely clear to me how much reducing some of the more manipulative behavior would actually reduce the extent of attachment. Mm-hmm. And it seems to me like we're kind of debating like the ethical dispensation of opioids in a sense. In a sense, like there are use cases where it's helpful, but it's very, very tempting for people to not moderate in this interaction, and there's no financial incentive in enforcing the core issue, which is moderation, where you don't want this supplanting people interacting with other people. So my question is like, how much evidence do we have that certain treatments work in this case? That makes sense.
That's a good question. So evidence of actual like interventions or specific like design decisions. It's a really new field. So if you look at the paper, I would say 90% of our citations are from 2024 or 2025. There's basically no work, not no work, I'm like exaggerating, but there's very little work on this before that. So I'm not aware of work directly saying that interventions will help. It's sort of on the edge of my memory. I can talk to you afterwards and give you the actual citation, but There's a paper where they created a steering vector that allowed them to change how much a large language model, an open weight large language model, did relationship-seeking behavior. And they did find effects of that I think would be relevant to what you're talking about. But I couldn't speak with too confidently about the specifics.
Okay, so I have one just recommendation. Is that there's a movie called Jexi, Jexi, for a funny example of this sort of relationship. So sort of adult humor, but pretty funny. And I guess he kind of asked my question, but I'll restate it. Are there any good examples of chatbots or something like that that you've seen? Well, this is something that we want to emulate. This is headed in the right direction.
Sure. So just off the top of my head, it's not a chatbot, but that robot Steel Pero, it seems like a pretty positive AI companion for certain people. There was recent coverage of LEQ in the New York Times that seemed to circulate somewhat. LEQ is a kind of a desktop or countertop robot meant for elderly people that's supposed to help them maintain their autonomy for longer as they age. And I believe there is research showing some positive effects. I haven't read it myself, but also just listening to the people like in charge of the company, they're clearly being thoughtful. It's hard to know exactly what motivates them, but you can often look at the marketing of various companies and kind of put them on a spectrum, where on the bad end often is your new AI best friend. They're not thinking deeply about this at all.
It's very interesting to learn about the relationship between an AI companion and humans. I was reminded of a book by Dr. Henry Cloud, where he talks about the relationship between humans. And I thought the model that he uses might be interesting for your work, where he talks about no connection, bad connection, fake connection, and good connection. So there's a quadrant that he talks about, and maybe classifying AI connections in a similar way might be an interesting idea.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd love to get the
Sure.
citation afterwards. Thank you.
This thing on? Okay, hi. Thank you for your talk. I was wondering what your thoughts are on, because there's an increasing amount of people, especially younger people, that are using LLMs and chatbots to actually do talk therapy, essentially, right? To ask important emotional questions. And while there's previous questions where you'd ask a friend or such, now a lot of people are turning to ChatGPT and Claude for those kind of questions, right? So I was wondering, what are your thoughts on those, that kind of paradigm?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that's one of the more hopeful, positive use cases for AI companions, if you count a professional therapeutic role as a companion, which I think I would. I'm not aware of research yet that shows over the long term that such usage is helpful. Personally, I can definitely see mechanistically how it would be useful. I think it's very helpful for me and many other people when in a situation, a difficult conversation that's upcoming with someone, to just talk to a language model and have it do perspective taking. It's quite good at that, at telling you what the other person might be thinking and feeling. And so it does seem like language models generally and AI companions, that can be one of their pathways to benefits, which is this kind of safe space to talk about certain things and try out certain social skills. The challenge is, sometimes interaction with people actually ultimately harms you and might make you more fearful of social interaction. So it needs to be built in a way that that's going to help you build those skills, build confidence, and so on. But even then, I think it's still an empirical question whether it's actually going to be beneficial.
Okay, we have one more question in the back for you.
Regular users, they don't have any control over the design of the models, and they're going to ask for relationship advice anyway. Is there any research about how to prompt the models better to get more adequate results?
If there is, I'm not aware of specific prompting strategies to get. I would just be speaking anecdotally about what people have said in various like news media that I've seen. So it probably not useful for me to speculate.
Okay, great. Thank you. And join me in another round of applause for Dr. Brad Knox.